A really great event that we had there in Riverside. And again, we're really targeting our young people. Now this was interesting. You're like, that's not a young person. This was an interview. So Alan Reinach is the gentleman that's talking. He's the younger of the two, and he's the Religious Liberty Director for the Pacific Union. The gentleman that he's interviewing, so the theme of that evening was we were highlighting the 50th anniversary of the deaths of, or not we were commemorating the 50th anniversary of the deaths of both Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy. And that gentleman that he was interviewing, that Alan was interviewing, was actually a part of the presidential campaign of Robert Kennedy, and was there the evening that Robert Kennedy gave his speech, his famous speech, the night that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And if any of you have ever heard that speech, then you'll remember that it's a pretty remarkable speech. And if you haven't, I would encourage you to look it up and Google it. It's just a very short speech, but it was given in Indianapolis. And he was encouraged not to give the speech because it was to a predominantly African-American audience, and obviously an audience that was very heartbroken and angry, and he really appealed to their inner, to their better person, to their better nature, and also shared in their suffering and their pain. And he, shared a bit about himself and the fact that he had also lost a brother who was assassinated. And anyway, that gentleman was a part of that campaign, and so it was interesting for him to be able to share that perspective. And so here's the youth choir that sang that evening, is from that local church. And then there's Pastor Brooks preaching. So it was a really great program. So this is there at the North American Division headquarters. As I mentioned, we've just been in our building for a year now. And so we are receiving an award. This is Elder Alex Bryant. He's the secretary of the North American Division. And this lady here is Jennifer Woods. She's from the Office of Neighborhood Partnerships, Community Faith-Based Partnerships from the office, from the Governor's Office in Maryland. And they're actually recognizing the North American Division for our community work, for our community outreach work. And again, we've only been there in Howard County, and again, we've only been there in the county for a year. So we felt pretty, that was really nice to be recognized in that way. And that happened, I think that was earlier this summer. It was a nice award. So this here, how many of you have heard of International Women's Day? Yeah. How many of you know that it's been going on for about 60 years? No one knows that, but it has. But of course, it's just recently been, we've been really hearing about it. It's been something that's received much more attention recently. And, I just showed you Jennifer Gray from the Governor's Office. Well, you may recognize her. She's here in this picture as well. And she asked if the Governor's Office could host, that they wanted to put on an International Women's Day event, and if the North American Division could host it. And we said, sure. Because one thing that's great about us being in our new location, and we have our own building now. We're not in shared space anymore. And so we can be part of our witness can be hosting events. We have space that we can use sometimes, that can be part of our ministry. So we were able to help host this International Women's Day event. And we said, sure, we'd be happy to help host as long as we're able to contribute a couple of the speakers. And so we were able to do that. So you'll look there and you'll see a diversity of speakers represented. It was really an incredible event. And so there's Jennifer, and then there's Donna Jackson. She's the wife of Elder Jackson, who's the president of North American Division, and she also works in the ministerial department and for the spouses of pastors in that capacity. And just a wonderful, wonderful woman to work with. When I talk to you about the community outreach events that we do and the food giveaways, she is usually the last person to leave, and we are like, we want to leave, so will you please leave so that we can leave now? She's amazing. So here's one of the speakers for the International Women's Day. She's a women's rights advocate for Muslim women, and it's interesting. So she was born here she was born in Baltimore, and decided as a teenager that she was very fed up with the beauty standards and modesty issues of that were being put on young women here in the United States, and so she's decided to start wearing a headscarf. That was not something that was part of her family's tradition, but she had been bullied by her peers in public school and things like that, and so she really decided on her own that was something that she wanted to do. And anyway, we were able to put her in touch. So she's really become a women's rights advocate. And in having a conversation with her, she was really impressed that the Seventh-day Adventist Church has its own women's ministries department, and that part of our women's ministries vision is for young women as well, and that we have the End It Now campaign that we do both with women through the Women's Ministries Office and also through ADRA. So it was nice to be able to make that connection as well. So you can see here some of our here's some of the women participating. So this is Dr. Marissa Leslie. She heads the behavioral health department at Shady Grove Adventist Hospital, and she, I think it's actually the adolescent behavioral health department there at Shady Grove Adventist Hospital, but she is the daughter of Haitian immigrants, and they actually her grandparents were part of the opposition party of the Haitian government, and so she shared one of the reasons. Not only is she a doctor, but she is also a human rights advocate and does a lot of volunteer work for refugees, and both that work and the reason why she has chosen the profession that she has. This is one of the individuals that we actually selected and wanted to participate in the event. But anyway, is because of what she saw through her grandparents' experience, and shaped who she is as an individual. And she really contributed a lot to the program. So this, I thought, was just a beautiful image from the day. Was this that one of the presenters encouraged them at the end of the day, everyone to grasp hands. So anyway, I just thought if you all, this again, as we talked about partnership ministries, if you have an active women's ministries program in your local church, maybe you think about celebrating International Women's Day this next year, And that might be something that you want to do, is find local women leaders in your community and highlight the work that they're doing, and do something like this. So this is a food giveaway, much like that's going on in our parking lot back at, I don't know. I think so. Last time I heard from him a little while ago, it was on its way. So I'm sure it has now. But this is what it looks like. It's cold there today too, so I think they're probably bundled up like that. But here's our parking lot, and here's the food. That's my director, Orland Johnson, there giving away food. So that's probably what he looks like right about now. But you can see, as I said, it's always produce. And this time we actually did, within our building, we actually did non-perishable collection as well. So we did non-perishable foods. And so there's going to be a little bit of that, or some of that as well. When I said the prayer, when Claude said the prayer before and I gave you the update, I said that there was about 150 people in the parking lot, and then I got the text later from Orland that there was about 250 people waiting in the parking lot. So it's going to be another successful event. The first time we did it, we had a 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock time slot, and we ran out of food at noon. Again, this is 25,000 pounds of food. So I would encourage you, if you look around and see if there's opportunities like that here in your area, if there are food distributors that might, you might be able to partner with in your area. Yes, I saw a hand. And there's a microphone for who? Did someone raise their hand? Yes.
A couple of quick questions that might help people get started. One, I'm wondering how you got the word out so that 250 people showed up.
Yes, great question.
And secondly, how did you initiate the explorations to find the food?
Yes. So Orland is the one who was able to find the food connection, and I would have to get back to you and post that on the message board as far as how he made that connection, because he made that through his local church, because he actually did that through his local church first before it ever came. And we did it at the division. So I'm not sure how he made the initial connection. Bless you. But I will follow up on that and find out how he made that initial connection. The second question is, so public schools, I contacted our local public school system, and they have a process in place where they approve flyers that nonprofits are able to have circulated through their public school system. And they're very willing to do that. You just have to follow their guidelines. And so I just create a flyer that is circulated each time, and it goes home with the kids. You can either specify whether or not you want to do an electronic announcement, or you ask the schools which they prefer. Do they prefer an electronic announcement, or do they prefer a hard copy? And if they prefer a hard copy, then I'll provide that, and they'll, like in my district, they want them stacked, 30 copies each, collated this way and whatever, and I just follow exactly what they tell me to do, But last Friday, those flyers went home where they have their Friday folders, and just like their homework goes home with them, so did a flyer for our giveaway. And it doesn't go to the whole school, every school district in Howard County, or every school in Howard County. It goes to the ones that are right there in the area. I select those, or we're able to contact those specifically or whatever. And so as we do these more and more often, we develop a relationship with those principals and or those school administrators. So that's a great way to do it. Also, our county council person, we've developed a relationship with her. She's just moved on to be a delegate in the Maryland, and so now we'll develop a relationship with the person that's replaced her. But we still have a relationship with her office staff, and that person is staying on. But they advertise for us as well. And then social media. So on Facebook, I've been advertising specifically targeted for our area, specifically for Columbia, and then I'll choose targeted audiences based on types of professions, types of that people have in Columbia, based on different categories of things. And, you can sort of choose who sees your, so very targeted ads as far as who's viewing that, social media ads. And then we also are able to, we're asking all of our local church pastors and our conference, both, we have 3 different conferences in the area, all of them to promote as well. And then we also had the opportunity, Orland was actually able to go on a local Baltimore television station and was interviewed in advance, and then was able to, that played last Sunday evening. So all of those events took place. Yes. Okay. There's somebody you might know. There's somebody else you might know if you had Todd McFarlane come out and talk to you. And he's giving away some food there. But you can see, like, we had pineapple, and I think that's at our Thanksgiving one. So you don't know what kind of food you're going to get. But yeah, you can see the pineapple better. But lots of happy faces. So in a component I think I just briefly mentioned is that we also combined with our local health system, the Howard County Health System, to do a wellness screening at the same time. We haven't done that on today, but the last 2 times that we've done it, we've done that. And it's really cool because, so Howard County's system is actually part of the Johns Hopkins Health System. And they have something that's called, I'm not going to be able to remember the name of it, but basically they partner with, they do things like blood pressure screening, pre-diabetes testing, weight management, all these kind of things. Basically, they want to, figure out things, try to help you live better and preventative illness issues. Get you on track before you get, sick, preventative illness issues. And so, anyway, so we've partnered with them in for this to happen at the same time. But the thing that I really like about this particular program is that let's say that you come and participate, or let's say that I participate in this program, and they recognize that I have high blood pressure, and that I want to bring that blood pressure down, but I don't have transportation to get to my local hospital. And they said, no problem. We partner with several local faith congregations in our church in this area, and they have and these faith congregations they actually provide transportation to get you to your appointments. And several of our local Adventist churches participate in this program, and as do several mosques, several Jewish synagogues, several other faith organizations. But I love it's a specifically faith-based hospital combo partnership, and I think that's wonderful that they do that. And so you have this specific health coach that you're partnered with, that's from this faith congregation, that walks you through, like whatever lifestyle is, challenge that you have, that then is now your partner from there on out. And so that was fun to be able to partner with them, and then also to get to know the individuals that were part of this program. So here you can see some of these individuals. And so we're hoping to continue to do that in the future. So I think that must be the end of my PowerPoint. I guess that's how I know I'm at the end of my PowerPoint. The next event that we have planned for our office, and another suggestion that I have for you all that you might want to be able to do, and again, you could do this in conjunction with another one of your ministries, is so on January 16. So how many of you all have heard about the National Prayer Breakfast? Yes, I'm sure you have, for various reasons. So the reason why that date is chosen is because that is actually the date for international, or not international, that's actually religious, in the United States, that's actually Religious Freedom Day. So January 16 is Religious Freedom Day, or that date, like, I don't know if it's like the second Tuesday or whatever date it is, but I don't think it's a specific date. I think it's in conjunction with, it's a Wednesday in January. So we are going to be hosting a prayer breakfast. The North American Division is going to be hosting at our office a prayer breakfast in conjunction with Religious Freedom. And so we have seen, yes. And so that's something that you all might want to do in your local churches, because again, we have seen, if you were to look up prayer breakfast or Religious Freedom Day, I think online, you might see a version of religious freedom that is maybe not something you're comfortable with. And so I think it might be a good idea to have something at your local church that maybe is something that, is more, in a traditional version of religious freedom that, you feel comfortable with, that is along the standards of Seventh-day Adventist beliefs and our historical perspective. That's what, so that's what we're going to be doing on the 16th. We're going to be inviting both civic and faith leaders, both there in Maryland, and to our division headquarters, and we're going to have our administration representation there. But again, that might be something that you might want to do. You don't have to do it on the 16th if that date doesn't work, but I think something along, this is again just a jumping off point for you. Partner with your prayer ministries team, perhaps, to do that. I think that would be a great way, again, to have your pastor get involved. And, some of your musicians that you have, we have great musicians in our congregations. Have them get involved and participate. But that's going to be the next thing that we do in our public affairs ministry is our Religious Liberty Prayer Breakfast. And hopefully that will be something that will work out well and then be an annual event for us. So one more time, I'm going to talk about or just pitch encourage you guys to partner with other ministries. As I mentioned before, health ministries. There really is that component, or there's that natural bridge between religious freedom and health. Prayer ministries, women's ministries, Pathfinders, Adventist Community Services. There's so many ways and other ministries to partner together. Encourage you all to work with other congregations. I saw a couple of you exchanging information earlier, and it was encouraging to see. And then other local faith communities as well. I think that Seventh-day Adventists, unfortunately, have the reputation of just working with each other, and that's tough to hear, and I think, unfortunately, it might be true a lot of the times. It might be, and so let's really, let's see where we can find commonalities. There's not going to, we're not going to be able to work together on every project, as far as, with other faith groups. That's, but there will be some times when we can work together, and let's find those opportunities. So from there, I want to talk about, I think I'll move on to, yes. Yes.
Two things I'd like to just add to this particular point. One is, if you look at the research, Christianity is developing a bad rap in this country. Mm-hmm. And much of it is just because they don't think we're worth it.
You want to turn around and talk to me?
Yeah, okay. Much of the reason for the bad rap is that people don't think churches are good for anything. We don't think we're relevant. And to the extent that we partner with people on things like Melissa has just been talking about, we help to erase that bad image. And we create more of a credibility for our voice when we're speaking out for religious freedom. The second thing that is that sometimes I hear people concerned, well, the other people's values and beliefs are different and we don't want to get entangled with them. And I look back at our history. Ellen White was very active in partnering with non-Adventist groups. One of the examples that really impresses me, she encouraged, and you can read this. You want to go online to the Ellen White writings, you can find this yourself and read it if you want. She encouraged members to be working with the Christian Temperance Association. You know, in her day, prohibition was a big debate. And there were a lot of non-Adventist Christians and others that were campaigning to outlaw alcohol in different states. She strongly encouraged our churches to get involved in that effort and to support the Women's Christian Temperance Society, which was the leader in that campaign. And at the very time where she was urging us to get involved with that, that same group was actively campaigning for Sunday laws. So my point being, even though we may have different views on some issues, there are places where we have common beliefs and common goals, and we can feel clear in conscience to cooperate with them on those areas. We have, you know, a history that demonstrates that that's an appropriate thing for us to do.
Oh, there's a hand in the back. Get my steps in today.
Well, I just came here this morning and I heard so many things about the religious liberties and religious freedoms. It's the purpose in this Seventh-day Adventist is to practice the government's religious liberties to Seventh-day Adventist respect, and due to the fundraising for religious liberties and freedoms. As the practice on this church as the Seventh-day Adventist local communities or Great New York Conference, that to participate as government assistance, which is the religious liberties. But I believe that we are believers in Christ Jesus, so we are more focused on what is the Word of God tell us to be as a bachelor Christians under Christ Jesus, on behalf of Seventh-day Adventists in great and or towards the great. I don't really know about much because I knew believer in Seventh-day Adventists and 2 years ago. For now, I'm not really involved anything about Great New York Conference. Where is the system over there? What they are fundraising, everything go there. But I understand that those funds to reach out to the people, to local communities or international communities, all throughout many countries, that we are as a part of a Seventh-day Adventist to do God's missionaries. And that's our goal, to reach out to all human beings, that the end of the world will come, that Jesus Christ will come to us, that he appeared to us. We are not his bride. He can take us to heaven with him forever.
Amen. I think that absolutely is our goal. And I think we want that for everyone who desires it for themselves as well. And so I think as long as we can be helpful in that effort, we should continue to do so. So I appreciate your comments. So I have talked about what your role as the local religious liberty leader is, and I've talked about the role of NARLA, and I've talked about the public affairs side of things. So I'm not sure if you want me, what else you wanted me to address. Yeah, if there's any additional questions. Yesterday I talked about the role of what the church does, both domestically and internationally. So if there's any additional questions.
As promised, if we go back to the issue she raised, and then we can take some of the other ones. She was asking about the role of the Johnson Amendment, and he had the same issue as
Yes.
its impact today.
Yes. So yes, and we talked about the Johnson Amendment yesterday as well. And so, as I mentioned, the Seventh-day Adventist Church has always been opposed to partisan politics from the pulpit. And I read a quote yesterday, and I'll read it again because I think it's very good. So it says, this is from Ellen G. White, it says, "There is danger, decided danger, for all who shall link themselves up with the political parties of the world, and there is fraud on both sides. God has not laid upon any of our people the burden of linking up with either party. We are under Christ's banner, and everyone who names the name of Christ is to depart from all iniquity." And that's from the General Conference Daily Bulletin, February 17, 1897. And so the Seventh-day Adventist Church always has been very vocal about that dividing line as far as separating the church and state. And so when the Johnson Amendment has come up in this recent debate, we have taken the position of being very vocal about our opposition to any sort of changes in that regard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Clark, Elder Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the issue that you raised, they weren't able to outright get rid of it, but they did indicate that they were going to try to scale back on active enforcement of it.
Yeah, basically he encouraged, you don't really need to enforce it if you don't, is what is right.
Yeah, in reference to what I was discussing with you about that legislation, they're trying to either omit or change some rules on that regarding it, because basically before, how it came about basically was like the wrong way in a way, but they want to so-called give people a voice, which is dangerous, but they want to tweak it or something like that. Was that their main goal, I believe, that they were trying to do? Because they mentioned it before.
Currently, what the goal is now, or what the goal is when it was
currently now, because before it was pretty obvious because he mentioned it. But what are they doing now about that legislation?
What's happening now? So the goal, as far as the federal, you're saying as far as what the federal government is wanting to do, or what?
This administration, yes.
Well, I think what the criticism of the amendment is that, or the evangelicals, is that people that are critical of the amendment are saying that it's stifling their right to be able to express themselves from the pulpit, and they have the freedom of speech to be able to say what they want from the pulpit, and so that's their criticism. And so people that are opposed, the Seventh-day Adventist Church being one of them, the people who are proponents of the Johnson Amendment say, well, in fact, the separation of church and state, and so I mentioned Holly Hallman before, and the organization that she represents, the Baptist Joint Committee, and one of their slogans is the separation of church and state is good for both, and we agree with that. In a healthy society, that line of separation is good for both both organizations, both segments of society, both church and state, and that's our position. In that, you know, the church is both segments of they flourish better if they're not combined with each other, and so that's our position on that.
The last active attempt to undermine it was when they were doing the tax overhaul. One of the things they were attempting to do was tie that to whatever passed. Ultimately, that didn't happen.
Right.
So as she said, right now, you don't really find it as an active source of legislation per se.
Right.
But, you know, the church always has to be on its,
Right.
on its watch.
This,
Yes. Oh,
yeah,
same.
this you, I think it was you.
Different topic?
Can the Religious Liberty Department of NAD, all right, bring to the forefront what this Johnson Amendment is all about in terms of to the local churches, and then what is the present administration attempt to do away with the Johnson law? If it should pass, how will it affect us as Adventists? Can your department do something like that?
You mean like maybe like a question and answer, frequently asked questions, sort of like just like a memo of to share with people? Is that what you're saying? Like just an explanation of like how the law stands now and how things would change if it was.
Yeah, because when I heard, and this what really ticked me off, right, is that both the president and the vice president, they agree on this one issue of nullifying the Johnson Amendment. All right, so I decided to go and dig because I never heard about that before. So first time I heard about this present administration. So I went and dig and to search and to get information so that I can share my church. So what I'm saying basically, can your organization from the Religious Liberty Department get the Johnson Amendment, what it entails, and then alongside with what they want to do with the Johnson Amendment, and send that document out as well to the local churches. At least we can become, instead of us going and dig here and everywhere for information, which may not be positive to us in the end.
Sure. Yeah, when that whole situation was happening, several articles were written by those of us that work in the, but maybe they need to be recirculated on your message board or something like that. Maybe that would be helpful.
We as people who are concerned about religious liberty are always on the lookout for laws that might break the wall between church and state. But I believe that there are laws already in place.
Yes.
That are, now I'm not talking about the blue laws, I'm talking about new laws that have been passed recently, in recent decades, that could be used to break that wall. For example, the hate speech laws. When eventually it's going to become hate speech to speak against homosexuality, against transgenderism, or gay marriages, we as a church, we have our standing on that. When are they going to come into these doors and sit down in the back and wait for a preacher to speak against that and get arrested?
The interesting thing I find is that they spent so many years in their early movement fighting against prejudice and now they've become the monster that they were trying to kill, because now you say the smallest thing and they're after you. They become a very powerful organization, and I think it's just a matter of time. I think many things are already set and ready to go. It's just a matter when I personally believe It's the commission by God for the 4 angels to hold the winds until his people are sealed. And when he has his number, he's going to ask them to let go, and all these things you speak about. I think it's just a matter of time.
We have other questions? Maybe not really. Sure.
Now that the brothers actually brought up that subject, as this is a religious liberty session, I have to pose a question to our speaker. How, as leaders, even as Christian in general, do we somehow get around this legal twist in the law without getting, like, say, crucified for it publicly and reaching the people of Christ about this issue? Because it's getting more broader by the day, legally, politically, and socially, on people who are gay or not gay, or people just support this thing and yet they think it's a good cause, but in reality it's not. You know, how do you get around that precisely in this specific ministry?
I guess I get around what aspect exactly? What are you saying?
Okay, like saying, for example, religious liberty, we're about our rights as Christians, profess our faith, talk about God. They have their message about saying, oh, you know, we want to love each other and whatever it is, now the laws what have you. We know our premise as Christians. They have their basis on being whatever they are. I just need to know, how do we get around that and bringing them to, like, say, our side of the situation without having, like, this conflict? Because they want to paint us as the enemy. You know, like, oh, we're just judging you, and, you know, you hate us because we live how we live, or whatever it is. You know, I'm just wondering, how do we, you know, get around it? I know it's a broad topic for anyone, but if you would just enlighten us on that.
She started out the day with a quotation, and I think that quotation goes a long way toward helping us reach different aspects of the population. And the servant of the Lord said, by love is love awakened. And I think in our outreach to other people and to other groups, as long as people realize that we love and care about them, they'll be more receptive to our message. And that's why, even in dealing with that population, because when I was in law school, quite a few of my classmates were, and they knew I was a minister, but what none of them could ever say about me, even though they knew my stand morally, all of them knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that I loved and cared about them. And when people realize that you love and care about them, they're more open to a position that you're advocating. And even if they ultimately disagree with you, not one of them could ever say that I said an unkind word to them, that I ever disparaged them in any way. And I made no secret about being a pastor and where I stood on different issues. We would get in discussions all the time. But with all of that, they knew that if you needed a shoulder to cry on, somebody to get a prayer through for you, they didn't give coming to me a second thought, because they knew I cared. It makes a difference.
I like to add on what you just said. I think why the gay community often has trouble with Christianity is the way we come at them. You know, this fire-breathing God who wants to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and yeah, but my point is, you know, we give them the image of this God who so abhors homosexuality that, you know, we just paint this mean, terrible face of God to them.
We pick one sin.
Yes, and we come after them, and I think yes, with love. I think if we change our approach, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
We can make a difference.
Right. I think, you know, we approach this issue like we approach the diversity of faith traditions, and how we approach, you know, the diversity of, and, you know, we're, like I was talking about, you know, we work with other, you know, faith traditions, and we certainly, you know, I have a very different belief system than my Muslim brothers and sisters, but I approach them not with, you know, I approach them with love and with, you know, with respect, and that's, you know, if we can find commonalities in various things, then that's what we're going to do. But, and you know, my ultimate goal is that, you know, they will find Christ at some point and have a relationship with him at some point. And maybe my witness will be part of that. I don't know. You know, only the Holy Spirit can you know, make that happen. But it certainly isn't going to happen by my enforcement of something or me being unkind to them in some way or anything like that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my first point is plain truth. Tell them the truth, and the truth will make them free, number one. My next point has to do with the laws of the land and all these things. We should not forget that the time is coming that laws will be passed in our land and other land, as you said this morning, that will restrict and are going to restrict our religious liberty. Regardless of what we are saying about religious liberty, when the time comes, it's going to come, and our religious liberty will be restricted, and we can do nothing about it.
Melissa, on that point, and I'll come to your hand, I just want to remind the church, it is true that prophecy has given us a roadmap. The servant of the Lord, right on the heels of that, reminds us that all of us have a responsibility to advocate for what's right. Despite what prophecy says, we should always be advocating for what's right. Not because we're trying to change prophecy or anything like that, but it's right to advocate for what's right. And she comes behind that and says that if anybody uses what prophecy says as an excuse to sit back and do nothing, that God will hold them accountable for their failure to stand for what is right. So it's true, prophecy has decreed that we are going down a road that ultimately ends in glory, but the ministry of religious liberty will always be appropriate, even when we are minutes away from the passing of these draconian laws that will severely restrict. And even after those laws are passed, as long as I have breath, you will still find me standing up and advocating for what's right.
Religious liberty. Freedom to do what you think is right in your eyes. The question about homosexuality, gays, lesbians, I came up a while ago, and this is something that is plaguing me for a while, and every opportunity I get to ask a question, I ask the question. Is there anything we can do as a church based on the liberty and so forth? If you find in our schools a couple came to register their child, son or daughter, of the same sex, what system does the church has to handle that situation? Religious liberty, freedom, and so forth.
You know, I don't work in the education department. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think that there is any grounds for that student being allowed at school. Not being allowed. Yeah, I don't think that there's I don't think there's any legitimate grounds for that child not being allowed. The fact that their parents are involved in is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, there's no bar to that.
Yeah.
And honestly, when it comes to our schools and when it comes to our tent efforts, the more people I can get in there to hear the unadulterated gospel, the better it is for everybody.
Yeah.
It's a fine line. It's a very fine line, because how do you, and I guess you need the wisdom of the Lord to determine civil rights and religious rights. Civilly, kids by law, have to be educated. If that's, well, first of all, the first thing I want to say, if that school is receiving government money, that school has no choice. They have to accept. Although religion still does have a right, if it's a self-supporting ministry, they have a right to choose who is in. Personally, I think I lean towards accepting anybody, because as you said, it gives an opportunity. I have a Jehovah's Witness friend, and you know, you're sort of taught in a subtle way in Adventist church, you stay away from those people. I don't stay away from him. He's still my friend. Being Jehovah's Witness, being Adventist has nothing to do with me being his friend. However, what it affords me the opportunity, when we get into our little discussions, it then gives me a chance to give a point of truth to him. Doesn't matter. I can't do anything about whether he accepts it or not, but it gives me an opportunity to give him a point of truth. And praise the Lord, I even got him to admit a few times, I never looked at it that way. So you never know what seed you're planting. You know, it's not up to you for the results. It's just up to you when you get a chance, say your piece in the name of truth, and then let the Holy Spirit do the rest. And
I think our Adventist schools are probably potentially one of our better evangelistic opportunities, and or can be. For those of you that weren't here yesterday afternoon, I shared the story of Elder Wilson. I guess he's also a pastor. I don't think he would mind me calling him Pastor Wilson. And the opportunity that he had earlier this year to speak to the president of Uganda. And they were having a meeting, and evidently some individuals, some students in Uganda were having issues as far as having to take tests on Sabbath or attend classes on Sabbath. And so President Wilson and the president of Uganda were having this diplomatic meeting, and President Wilson mentioned this issue to the president there. And they were able to, first of all, the president asked him about the Sabbath issue. They had a little bit of a Bible study there about why they worshiped on the seventh day of the week. And then they were able to resolve the situation or whatever. But anyway, what I didn't share with the congregation yesterday was one of the reasons that I think that Elder Wilson shared, that he thinks that the issue was resolved as easily as it was, is that this gentleman was educated as an elementary school student at an Adventist school, and he was familiar with the Seventh-day Adventist religion. That's where he learned to read as a young person. He had positive, in other words, he had a positive association with he didn't give his heart to Jesus and become, Seventh-day Adventist and all that, but he had a positive association with the religion. And so I thought there's something to be said for just, planting a seed. And
at the very least, he's going to share that positive feeling he had with other people.
Right. And then accommodate the students who want to take their exams on Saturday. Yes.
Regarding the Jehovah's Witnesses, sometimes that's considered a ministry that comes to your door.
Yes, yes.
Regarding the fine lines, ministers have to register with the government in order to marry.
Mm-hmm.
And again, somebody's going to come to our churches and ask the minister to marry them if they are openly gay. And maybe even to just start a debate or some kind of lawsuit. But the fine line between church and state, how do we handle that if that arises?
On that particular point, I can address it for New York at least, because New York went back and forth on gay marriage for a long time. And it's interesting that the year they finally passed the law, I was doing family law that summer and got into quite a debate with some of my classmates about it. But here's the thing. One of the things that finally helped it pass in New York, one of the senators, one of the New York senators who opposed it, only moved to support it when there was ironclad guarantee written into the law for that very thing that you're talking about. So the point is, the law is written with something of a poison pill, meaning that if anyone ever successfully sues a denomination for not agreeing to marry two people of the same sex, the law is supposed to go away. What he was adamant about, he said, listen, I don't believe in this, and the only way I'm going to support it is if you put a provision in there protecting churches who have a stand on it from people being able to go after them legally for not supporting same-sex marriage. So at least here in New York, the way the law is written, there's a provision there that says that you cannot legally go after a church for failing to comport with your interest in this area. Now, I don't know how it is other places, but I know that that is the case here in New York. And the worst thing that could ever happen, and I guess maybe for some would say the best thing that could happen, if somebody did go after a church and that happened, because the way the law is written, the provision within is supposed to go away. At least that's the way the law is written. Yeah.
That sounds fair, though.
Yeah.
I mean, just as someone has a right to do it, we should also have a right.
Exactly.
Right.
Any other questions? Or?
Yeah. I think, can this maybe be the last one?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. So, folks, in a second, she's going to wrap up, and we're going to throw it back to Elder Morgan, but I just want to throw this out. We have folks here from all around the New York area, and some of you are from Brooklyn, Queens, some of you are from Manhattan, and I want to encourage you, if you realize that you have shared space this afternoon with a religious liberty leader from a church not too terribly far away from you, Elder Morgan and I have been encouraging something, and we're going to do more of it, especially as we go forward. It's a wonderful thing if churches can collaborate in your liberty campaigns. If you are a church that's near another church, even if you're from a different conference, it's a wonderful thing if you share contact information, and one Sabbath you get together as a group to promote in one church, and then you get together to promote it in another church. What it does, it keeps one person from feeling like it's them against the world, and the other thing it does, it gives you a chance to be exposed to some creativity. One person may have an idea for promoting that you never ever would have thought about. And when area churches in a given neighborhood work together to promote the campaign, because I'll tell you where Elder Morgan and I are ultimately trying to go with this thing. We're trying to get it to the place that when you look at statewide, this church knows, okay, you know what? We need to get X number of sponsorships because this is the spot we want to cover, and this is the territory, and we want to get it to the place where we have systematically, through the Liberty Campaign, covered the entire state. Donald Trump doesn't need to get 500 sponsorships, and the little assemblyman over here doesn't get one. So we're trying to get it to the place where we can work together collaboratively so that from the tip to the snip, the whole area is covered. So in that spirit, we want to encourage churches, as you've got a chance to meet each other here and get phone numbers, collaborate and work on your campaigns together, and you never know, the heavy lifting gets a little lighter.
Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for staying through this and again, for taking on this responsibility at your local church. We really do appreciate it. Us at the division and conference level could not do this ministry without you. You are the heart and soul of this ministry, so thank you so very much for taking this on. I do want to encourage you. We're talking about the different laws that are in place right now, and as I said yesterday, we are so blessed as Americans because we do have all the freedoms that we do, that are in place right now. But they are temporary freedoms, and they are in place only right now. They will go away, but that's not something to be concerned about. That's actually something to rejoice about, because we know what comes after that. right? We can be like Peter and John and rejoice at the sufferings that we might endure for our Savior, because we'll be enduring them because we get to be like Jesus when we go through them, and we know what's on the other side of that. And so I would encourage you along that whole entire journey as we take it together, because there's a heavenly home that's awaiting us on the other side of that. So we want to stand and as we say a final prayer together. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity to spend some time together this morning in your presence. We know that you've been here with us. We thank you for the opportunity to serve you in this capacity. We ask for your blessing as we take on this role for this coming year, and we ask for your guidance as we do so. We want to do it humbly and to your glory and to your honor. We ask for your safety as we travel back to our homes, to our destinations, and we again thank you for your presence here today. We thank you for this church here specifically that's been such a wonderful host church to us. And we thank you for this leadership here in the Northeastern Conference and the Greater New York Conference. And we ask a special blessing on these two leaders as they continue their work for you. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Could I just ask a question before you go away? And before I even ask the question, Melissa, thank you. This has been a great blessing to us. I really appreciate it. But I had to be out of the room for a moment when you were talking about the NARLA, and I'm wondering, was there any discussion at all about the possibility of a NARLA chapter in New York?
I just made some suggestions about if they wanted to do that.
Okay, so the idea has been raised. What is the reaction of the group? Any of you have nod your head, shake your head, any reactions one way or the other? Is this something that you would like to see us explore? Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not something, you know, Lawrence and I can have a NARLA chapter and there'd be 2 members, but that doesn't make any sense. It's an idea that makes sense only if everybody thinks it's worthwhile. Yeah, okay, so we'll begin exploring a little bit, and in my mind, and incidentally, just to make sure, if there's anybody here that is interested in keeping in touch with New York religious liberty developments, if you didn't put down your email address on the sign-in sheet, stop and do that on the way out, because we do have a religious liberty website for our religious liberty action team, and we'd be happy to have any of you join the team if you'd like to, but it's you know, we have to have an email address to give you the invitation. You know, I've reached a point where often when I come to a meeting and look around, I discover I'm one of the oldest people in the room. And from that vantage point, I look back, and we've talked several times today about prophecy and about the fact that we will lose our religious liberty. The thing that haunts me is if we lose our religious liberty because we didn't speak up for it, it's going to be on us, not on the prophet. You know, can't blame the prophet for something we didn't do. And I look back, and a few decades ago, Liberty Magazine, as an example, had a circulation of over 500,000 subscriptions. Now we're, what is it, Melissa? Liberty Magazine, a little under 200,000? A little under 200,000. So at the very time where our religious liberty is slipping away, and it's been slipping away for the last 30 years or so, and you don't feel it. Come here on Sabbath morning, nobody disturbs you, but our religious liberty is weakening and steadily slipping away. And yet our voice as a church speaking for religious liberty is the weakest it's been in my lifetime, and we need to turn that around in New York. One thing you can all do with regard to the liberty subscriptions that you work on for your church, I'm not sure how many of the legislators actually read Liberty Magazine. They're busy people, they've got a lot of issues, I don't know, but you know, one group that I think we're overlooking that I suspect would be interested in Liberty Magazine, is ministers. I don't mean Adventist ministers, I mean all the other ministers. And so when you're making up your list, you can go to the internet, you can go to whatever contact sources you have in your community. Typically there's ads for churches in your newspapers and all kinds of places where you can find contact information for mail a Liberty magazine to a minister in your community. And these are people that are interested in religion, they're interested in religious liberty, and I think it's going to be a very high proportion of them that are going to be seriously interested in reading Liberty magazine if we just get a copy to them. A lot of speech for ending the meeting, but hope that there's something there that you can take away. Thank you all for coming, and keep working hard on the religious liberty.
Northeastern RL directors, you can meet me in the back. I'll give you your bonds on the way out. And let's give Elder Morgan a big hand. He's really helping to pull this thing together for us.
Okay.